Sydney, a city that many would refer to as a crown jewel of Australia. From its stunning cliff sides to its sun-kissed beaches, from world-renowned architecture to multicultural neighborhoods that you've probably never heard of, Sydney is a city that always delivers exactly what you want. Someone who's lived in Sydney for almost 5 years, I want to go over some of the known and unknown places to visit. I want to go over the neighborhoods that you've never heard of and the opera house that everybody's seen. Some beaches that are secluded and hard to find, and Bondi Beach, which is world famous. Whether you're a seasoned local who's been here their whole lives or a tourist who couldn't even find Australia on the map, I'm hoping that this will have something new for you to do in Sydney. Let's kick things off with the number one thing that anyone has to do when they come to Sydney, and that would be see the Sydney Opera House. At over 50 years old, the Opera House is one of the main attractions when anyone comes to Australia, visited by more than 1.2 million people a year, and it was opened up by Queen Elizabeth herself. This is something that every visitor to Australia and Sydney needs to see. If you're lucky enough to be in Sydney during any one of a number of events, you'll get to see the Opera House lit up with a projector, and if you're looking to go inside the Opera House and see it itself, you could just wander in like you're looking to buy tickets. You could do a tour, you could even go to see an opera, or you can go out to the famed Benny Long restaurant for an amazing but expensive meal. On the more budget side of things, there's always the Opera Bar, located right outside the Opera House. It's somewhat inside the Opera House, it's just in the underground part of it, and you can sit right by the water, enjoy a drink as you watch boats come and go. You also get an amazing view of the Harbour Bridge, and for a backdrop, you have the famed Sydney Opera House. At number 2 on our list, we have Circular Quay. This would be the harbour walk between the Opera House and the Rocks. Circular Quay is the area that every cruise ship will drop its passengers off in, right in the heart of Sydney. A lot of boats leave from this area, so whether you're looking to take a ferry to Manly Beach or go out whale watching, this is likely a place that you will end up no matter what. In addition to this, right behind the ferry port, you have a subway station that'll take you all over the city, and further back behind that, you have a nice little walkway pedestrian area where trams can pick you up, and across from the trams, you have a nice mall that you can go to for a number of fast food options. In this area, you will come across souvenir shops, but I would recommend not going to them. Products they sell are fine, but you can find the products for a lot cheaper at other places that are going to be listed later on in this video. Now, moving on from Circular Quay, we've got the Rocks. The Rocks would be the oldest neighborhood in Sydney, and in fact, the oldest neighborhood in Australia. It was settled in 1788 by some of the first Europeans to come to Australia, and since then, it has been populated. It has a lot of history, including some amazing ghost stories, so if you're looking for a place that you want to take a tour or get a walking tour, the Rocks would probably be the place to go. From a no-nonsense historical tour to a ghost tour, you can find them all in the Rocks. And if you're looking for a place to visit, I'd recommend Fortune of War, which is the oldest bar or pub in Sydney. It has that classic pub feel to it. You can get a good fish and chips, and sometimes you even have live music. That said, if you like this neighborhood, make sure you wander around, make sure you explore, because there's something amazing around every corner. Now we're going to be headed across the bay back to the Opera House, and we're going to be talking about the Royal Botanical Garden. The Royal Botanical Garden is, in my opinion, the most beautiful garden or park that you can find in Sydney. It's 30 hectares and it was established in 1816. Entry to the garden is completely free, and if you're looking to find some of the birds that Australia is famed for without leaving the city, you can find them here. In addition to bin chickens, which you can find throughout the city, you're going to also find kookaburras, parrots, and cockatoos. Along with that, you're going to find some species of trees and plants that are native to Australia and some that are native to Asia and sort of surrounding continents. It's a beautiful way to just walk through a park, see a lot of history, see a lot of sights, and really enjoy or put a nice little ending to your day. Do note that the park does close around sunset, so make sure you're not going there too late in the day because there is a lot to explore. From beautiful Italian-style gardens to picturesque desert landscape, you can find it all in this park, and I would recommend you take at least a couple hours to explore it. If you time everything right, you're going to get done exploring the park around sunset, which means you can walk up to Miss McQuarrie's chair and get a breathtaking view of Sydney. Seriously, there is no better way to see the city, and if you're looking for the perfect Instagram spot or just spot to take a photo, this is it. From here, if you walk into the city, you will be able to see St. Mary's Cathedral. There's no shame in taking an Uber because it is a bit of a walk, but St. Mary's Cathedral is one of the more beautiful pieces of Gothic architecture in Sydney. It's a stunning cathedral inside and out. It's meticulously carved and designed, and it dates back over 200 years, meaning many Sydney locals have been baptized, married, and buried in this very cathedral. Now across from the cathedral, you have Hyde Park. It has a beautiful fountain and is amazing for walking. I used to live in the area. I affectionately called it my dog's billion-dollar bathroom. But despite the name I've just given it, Hyde Park is amazing to visit. It's lined by massive Australian native trees. If you want to enjoy a Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon like a true Australian, grab a cup of coffee, go to the park, sit back, relax, and watch the day lazily pass you by. The park is amazing, the locals love it, it's great for a picnic, and it's great for seeing a few of the local animals. Fun fact, this is the only place in Australia that I've ever seen a possum. Also located in Hyde Park is the ANZAC Memorial. In Australia, each major city has its own special war memorial. This is Sydney's. It was built after World War I to commemorate all of the soldiers who fought in various battles and lost their lives, and it continues to represent all soldiers since. Now we're going to be jumping all the way across Sydney to Darling Harbour. Darling Harbour contains a lot of attractions that they themselves are worth visiting, but the harbour itself is just an amazing place to go relax, maybe enjoy a really good bite to eat. There's a lot of restaurants here, there's a few nightclubs if that's what you're looking for, and of course there's a lot of bars. It's a great place to go bar hopping, it's a great place to get a nice dinner, or a great place to go clubbing. There's a lot that you can do here, and it has something for everyone. Those of you that like boats, this is where a lot of boats will pick you up if you're looking to do a dinner cruise around the harbour, a party cruise out in the ocean, or even a deep sea fishing expedition. In addition, for those of you that like boats, you also have the Australian National Maritime Museum. Here you'll be able to actually get onto and explore a submarine or see the extremely amazingly named HMAS Vampire. Inland, but still inside of Darling Harbour, you have the Chinese Garden of Friendship. While the garden itself is not huge, it's an oasis of calm inside of the city. You can go here, sit next to the pond, listen to the waterfall, and enjoy some tea, all while contemplating your next adventure in Sydney. It's tranquility at its finest. Moving on from the Chinese Garden of Friendship, you can go up to Chinatown. If you're familiar with Chinatowns, this would be what you expect. It's a 1950s style Chinatown. Inside of the Sydney Chinatown, you'll find a lot of more modern Chinese or Asian style restaurants and activities. There are a myriad number of brightly lit arcades that you or your kids can go enjoy. You have famed restaurants and tons of authentic Chinese places that you can go to shop. However, if you're looking for souvenirs, I suggest you keep going to Paddy's Market. Paddy's Market is where you're going to get some of the cheapest souvenirs that you can get in Sydney. From a kangaroo skinned rug to a Sydney themed magnet to less than copyright friendly shoes, shirts, and everything in between. This market has it all. And one thing not to skip on Paddy's Market is going up to the top floor of the market. This would be the third floor. It has some really cool restaurants, and if I must say so myself, the food here is pretty good and it's a decent price. Now, if we jump into the middle of the city, you got the Queen Victoria Building. Opened in 1898, this is a stunning Victorian building. It's one of the best examples of Victorian architecture in the city and a definite must-see. If you go to the top floor of this building, you can see the famed royal clock, which was commissioned by none other than Queen Elizabeth II. And while we're talking about malls that you have to visit, I've got one more for you. It's called the Strand Arcade. An arcade is what they call malls a lot of the time. And this arcade or mall just happens to be a architectural marvel. It was built in the late 1800s and has that Victorian style that you're going to love if you like the Queen Victoria Building. It's a definite must-see and not too far from the QVB, so why not? And while you're down this way, there's one other place that I'd recommend visiting, and that would be Martin Place. This is a very beautiful place. It has some amazing bank buildings around it that were built in the 1800s and again have that historical Victorian architecture style. And if you're a fan of The Matrix, you're probably going to recognize the fountain. Just remember, the girl in the red dress can't be trusted. And now let's jump to something everybody probably knows about, the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Besides the Opera House, is probably one of Australia's most recognized architectural objects. The bridge stretches between Sydney and North Sydney and is traversed by over 160,000 cars a day. The bridge was opened in 1932 and it cost over 1.5 billion Australian dollars. That would be in today's money. Back then it cost about 10 million pounds. As far as seeing the bridge goes, there's a few different ways you can do it. You can walk across the bridge, you can drive across the bridge, or you can take a subway train across the bridge. The subway train and walking across the bridge will give you amazing views. Driving across the bridge still will reward you with a pretty nice view, but it's not as good as walking or taking the subway. If you're looking to get a bird's eye view of the bridge, you can do the bridge climb. It costs a couple $100, and that's why you're not seeing any footage of it here in this video. However, there's also a $20 option where you can go up into one of the towers and still get a pretty spectacular view. Now let's jump back into Sydney proper and go over some of the boat rides that you can take, because there's a myriad amount of options here. And whether you're only looking to spend a few bucks with a ferry from Sydney to Manly, or you want to go all out and see some whales, there are options for you, and I recommend you take at least one of them, because seeing Sydney from the harbor is something everybody should do if they visit the city. It's one of the best things, one of the best ways that you can view the city, so I definitely recommend it. So the first thing I wanted to mention was whale watching, because if you have never gone whale watching, it is an experience. In Sydney, most of the whale watching tours are nice enough to guarantee that you will see a whale. If you do not see a whale, they'll allow you to rebook your trip. So make sure you do that early on into your visit to Sydney, so that if you do have to rebook, you will be able to. But rest assured, I've gone whale watching twice, and both times we managed to see a few whales. One of the times we even managed to see a few dolphins and a seal. Also worth mentioning is that you're not just going out to see the animals. On the way out into the ocean to see the whales, you're going to be able to see these stunning oceanside cliffs that Sydney has. You can also see them from a few vantage points on land, but seeing them from a ship is a whole nother experience entirely. And at this point, I'm going to mention too that another option if you want to go out into the ocean is to take a fishing expedition. I've never done it, but a lot of people love it, so if that's your thing, maybe that's worth booking. If, however, you want to do it on the cheap, there is an option for you, and that would be to take a ferry to Manly. So Sydney has a few forms of public transportation, one of them being the ferry. You can take a ferry from Darling Harbour or Circular Quay, take it to Manly. It's a really nice trip. You go through the harbour, you're going to go out into the ocean just a little bit so you can see those stunning cliffs, and then you're going to arrive in Manly, which is a whole nother experience and one that I definitely recommend. But we're not going to be going to Manly just yet, because there's a few other options to cover. So the last option that I wanted to cover would be a dining cruise, or just a lunch or dinner cruise. These are going to take you into the harbor, but they're not actually going to go out into the ocean. You'll go just to sort of that mouth of the bay, and then you're going to turn around. You'll still get a lot of the stunning views and vistas, but it just doesn't go quite as far. If you're looking for a nice relaxing day out on the water, this would probably be the option for you, because these cruises tend to last 2 to 3 hours, and these cruises aren't just for tourists. A lot of locals will do this if they're going out for dinner with family, or companies will take their employees out to celebrate a big win or Christmas. Fun fact, Australia celebrates Christmas twice, once in July and once on Christmas. That's for another video, however. Which reminds me, if you've made it 13 minutes into this video, you probably like the style, so please hit subscribe. It helps me grow this channel. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and it would be really awesome to be able to do that before 2023 comes to an end. Now, moving into North Sydney. Here you've got a few things that you might want to do. The first one would be Luna Park. Luna Park is an amusement park. It has a few different rides. It's mainly geared towards kids, so we're talking about kids from maybe ages 5 or 6 up to 13, I'd say. The rides aren't anything spectacular if you're coming from the US. It's not like Six Flags. It's a little more dialed down, but it's still a lot of fun. Also, from the Ferris wheel, you will get an amazing view. Luna Park is free to enter, so even if you're not interested in taking the rides, you can go there and take some really cool shots. But if you are interested in riding some of the rides, do note that's an all or nothing type of things. You pay for the tickets and you get unlimited access to all the rides, but you cannot buy a ticket to just 1 or 2 rides. So if you want to experience that Ferris wheel, you gotta pay for the whole experience. Also, outside of Luna Park, you've got Lavender Bay. This is a beautiful bay in Sydney that's going to be a theme here because there are so many of them. This bay, however, gives you an amazing view looking into Sydney proper, or sort of the CBD of Sydney, or the Sydney downtown if you're American. You get a beautiful view of the Opera House, the Harbour Bridge, a lot of Sydney skyscrapers, and you can see a lot of boats going by. It's great if you're looking for a time lapse or just an amazing photo of the city. Also in this area, there's a coffee shop that I'd like to recommend. It's called Celsius Coffee and Dining. It's right on the water. And while the food and the coffee hasn't blown me away, coffee in Sydney is generally on another level, and the view just being right on the water makes it a pristine experience that I'd recommend for anyone. It's a $5 to $6 cup of coffee, so what do you have to lose? Moving further into the northern Sydney area, we're going to be going to Mosman. Mosman is one of the richer areas of Sydney, and it's pretty expensive here. There's some really nice restaurants, and what I've found is a lot of Americans with families tend to live in this area. I don't, however, because houses here cost something like $5 million. The reason, though, that I am recommending this area to you is because it contains the Taronga Zoo. The Taronga Zoo is probably the best zoo in Australia. It's really nice. It has animals from all over the world and it has beautiful views of Sydney. From what I've read, the zoo actually does treat its animals fairly respectfully. Moving further north, we're going to be eventually getting to Manly. Now, if you're going to Manly, you could do it by bus or you could drive there, but do remember that I said there's that whole ferry that goes from Sydney to Manly, and it's definitely worth doing at least once. As far as Manly itself goes, Manly is a chill oceanside beach town. If you get off the ferry in Manly, you're going to be thrust right into sort of the downtown of Manly. This is a boardwalk style area where you can go from restaurants to stores to everything in between. In this area, you're also going to find a Four Pines Brewery, which is a really good Sydney beer company that I'd recommend at least having one beer from. When it comes to beaches, the beach that I'd recommend, and the only beach that I've actually been to in the area, would be the Manly Beach. It's a beautiful beach. It's amazing. It's right on the ocean, obviously. You're going to get the waves coming in. You're going to get the weather coming in. But it is a stunning beach like so many Sydney beaches are, and it's definitely worth a visit. You can also rent kayaks here if you're looking to go and explore the ocean a bit, and if you want more of a hike, you can go to the North Head Sanctuary, which has some beautiful views and stunning trails. Moving across the bay from Manly Beach, we're going to be going into the eastern suburbs of Sydney. These would be the richest suburbs of Sydney. If you're looking for Ferraris and Lamborghinis, you're going to find a ton here, along with some Bugattis and rarer exotic cars. Can't tell you where exactly to find them, but if you happen to drive through this area for an hour, you will definitely find some of them. However, no one comes all the way to Australia to view a few supercars, but a lot of people do come for Bondi Beach. This is one of the most famous beaches in the world, and it can be found in the suburb of Bondi, which is an eastern suburb of Sydney. I would love to be able to adequately describe Bondi Beach, but words will fail me, so I'll let the video do it for me. And for those of you who don't know, Bondi Beach is more than just a beach. Just inside of the beach, you've got a nice boardwalk that has some amazing places that you can get fish and chips, a nice coffee, or even a tattoo. One famed place that a lot of people love to go is the Bondi Icebergs Swimming Club. You can get lunch or dinner here. There's Hurricanes, which is an amazing place if you're looking for some grilled barbecue meat. And they've also got a swimming pool, which is filled up with natural ocean water. If you've walked from Bondi Beach to Icebergs, you've started the Bondi to Coogee walk. This is probably the most beautiful walk you could do in Sydney, and if you're going to be doing any hiking, this is what I would recommend. It's going to take you along a few cliffs. It's going to take you down into some lesser known but still amazing beaches. You might be able to even see a black parrot, and at the end of this 6-kilometer walk, you're going to end up in Coogee Beach, which is another amazing beach. This one stretches out a little bit more and has room for barbecues if that is the thing you're looking for. Bondi is more of this hip, lively place. Coogee is a little bit more laid back, but it still has all the amenities that you could hope for at a beach. If you enjoyed the Bondi to Coogee cliff walk, another area I'd recommend visiting is Vaucluse. This is a quieter eastern suburb that is still located along the ocean. The beaches here are a lot smaller, and the main thing you're going to be coming here for is cliff walks. There's some really beautiful spots along the cliffs that you can just take in the ocean waves crashing against the rocks and really sort of sit back and relax. There's not going to be as many tourists here. It's a little bit more off the beaten trail. And if you're looking for beaches, they're not going to be as good. They're not going to be as populated, but they're still going to be pretty amazing. At this point, though, I need to give you a warning regarding the beaches. If you're going to any beaches in Sydney or even Australia, always make sure there's a lifeguard on duty or someone around that knows what they're doing. Beaches in Australia can be extremely beautiful, but the water can be extremely dangerous. The currents, the tides, the animals, there's a lot of things that can go wrong in the ocean and on these beaches. Bondi Beach is usually safe. There's going to be warning signs out. There's going to be lifeguards on duty. Some of these lesser known beaches will look pristine. They'll look beautiful. You'll see no one there, but sometimes there's a reason that no one's there. So make sure you know what you're doing and make sure that you play it safe. I'm a pretty good swimmer. At one point, I was almost a lifeguard, and I still wouldn't risk it at a lot of these beaches because I'm not a local. I've only been in Australia for 5 years, and I still don't know how to spot some of the natural dangers that Australians do know how to spot. But enough about the things in Australia can kill you. Let's talk about another beach that's going to blow you away in a good way, and this would be Cronulla Beach. Cronulla Beach is a stunning beach that's located about 30 to 40 minutes south of Sydney. It's a little bit of a trip to get out here, and I wouldn't recommend going unless you've got a lot of time in this city. But if you do manage to go, it is a stellar beach. A lot of surfers swear by it, and a lot of locals still love to come here swimming because it's never too busy. Beach stretches on for ways, so you're almost guaranteed to be able to find a secluded spot if that's what you're looking for. And the surrounding area itself gives the beach more of a European vibe. It reminds me of something that I'd expect to see in Spain rather than Australia. Now, moving away from the beaches and the eastern suburbs, we're going to be going west. The first more western suburb of Sydney that I'm going to be recommending is the Burwood Chinatown. The reason that I'm recommending the Burwood Chinatown area is because it stands out from a typical Chinatown. This area is a more modern take on Chinatown, and it is flooded with neon signs. Lights are everywhere, it's extremely bright, it's almost overwhelming to the senses, and when you first step in there, you really will be blown away. Food options are not just limited to Chinese food, and you can pick from anything from a Japanese restaurant serving conveyor belt sushi, to a small market stall slinging Singaporean noodles, to your classic Chinese hot pot. They've also got arcades and a really cool playground for kids. And while we're out in the eastern suburbs, there is one place that I would recommend depending on your situation. If you're here during Easter, the Olympic Park is going to be hosting the Royal Easter Show. The Royal Easter Show is an experience that everybody should have if they visit Sydney during Easter. It is crazy, it's intense. You get pretty much every food truck in the city, and there's a lot of them going to one location, selling everything that you can imagine. You've got rides for little kids to big kids to adults. You've got shows for people who are interested in cows, bulls, chickens, and you've also got farms. So it's basically a mix between some sort of state fair, a circus, and an amusement park. It is worth seeing if you're here in Easter. And in addition to that, if you are near Olympic Park and you have kids, I'd recommend visiting the Blaxland Riverside Park. It's been rated as having one of the best playgrounds in the world. These slides are built into hills, so the kids literally go underground and pop out at the bottom of the hill. You've got webbing for kids to climb on. There's a little water park if it's hot enough, and you've even got a dollhouse that goes up multiple stories. If your kids are a bit older and you can trust them to be on your own, you can sit alongside the river at a barbecue, cook up some meat, and enjoy a beautiful sunset while your kids get tired out. While both Burwood and Olympic Park are about 30 minutes outside of Sydney proper, now we're going to be talking about day trips, specifically going into the Blue Mountains. If you're planning a trip into the Blue Mountains, please note that you almost definitely need a car. There are tours and things like that you can hire out, but make sure you do that before going to the Blue Mountains. If you book a tour, the way you're probably going to want to do it is take the subway to Katoomba, and from there you're going to be jumping onto a tour bus. You could do things by bus, but it's going to take a while, it's going to take way too long, and you're not going to be able to see everything. In the Blue Mountains, there's a few things that you definitely need to do. The first off would be to see Three Sisters. It's a stunning rock outcropping, and it is right along a canyon side. To get to the Three Sisters, you're going to take a little bit of a hike. We're talking maybe 10 to 20 minute hike. You're going to see the Three Sisters, and then you're going to be able to look out across the valley. This would be the Jameson Valley, and from the Three Sisters, you can take some stairs down into this valley, but this is not for the faint of heart or the inexperienced. There are a lot of stairs here. It's not something that I personally did because it's a lot of stairs. It looks like a beautiful hike. It looks amazing, but it could go wrong if you're not prepared. If you want a hike that's a little bit easier, the one I would recommend is a Grand Canyon walking trail. This trail is 6 kilometers long, and it will loop around, so you basically start where you finish. When you arrive at this trail, you will begin from a parking lot that is located high up in the canyons. You will climb your way down some stairs into these canyons, which is where you're going to see rainforest. Yes, you heard me right. You're going to start in treetop mountains and climb your way down into a rainforest. Trail will wind you through canyons, past waterfalls, under rocks, and then you're going to come out on the other side, back in the mountains. It is a bit of an intensive hike, and you want to make sure you're prepared for it, but in a couple hours you can do this, assuming you're fairly fit. Also, while you're in the Blue Mountains, a favorite of any Sydney local is the Hydro Majestic. You can book a high tea experience here or just come for the coffee. You're going to get an amazing view of the Blue Mountains, and you're going to be able to see for miles. It's spectacular, and better yet, no matter what the weather, you can sit back inside and enjoy. Finally, moving away from the Blue Mountains, there's a few places that I'd recommend if you're looking for a weekend getaway. The first place would be Hunter Valley. Hunter Valley is where a lot of amazing wine is made, and if you strategically book your hotel, you can literally walk to multiple wineries in a few minutes. The way I would recommend doing Hunter Valley is first you need to drive there. Once you get to Hunter Valley, you can take a wine tour going to some of the wineries that are a little bit harder to visit. And after that, you can go back to your hotel and walk to some of the wineries that are closer to you. There's a lot of amazing options here. A lot of the wines are stellar, but do note alcohol in Australia is a bit expensive. Wine is generally one of the cheaper ways to get drunk, but you're still going to be spending $10 to $50 for your average bottle. For comparison, if you're going to be buying a bottle of hard liquor, you're going to be paying well over $50 for it. And if you're just looking to get on the beers, as the Australians would say, expect to pay a minimum of $3 per beer, assuming you're buying it from a liquor shop. If you're going out drinking, a good pub might have a deal. They'll get you a schooner for $6 to $7 and a pint for somewhere between $7 and $9. If it's not during happy hour, however, expect to pay about $10 to $15 for a bottle or pint of beer. For reference, if you're getting house wine at a bar, you're probably going to be paying about $12 to $15 for that wine. And if you're looking to get a cocktail, you're going to be probably paying $18 to $25 for a cocktail. And this would be at your average place. And speaking of places, I've got one more place to recommend, and that would be Jarvis Bay. Jarvis Bay is located 2 to 3 hours south of Sydney, but it has one of the best beaches in the world. It's supposed to have the whitest sand in the world, and at night the beach can become photoluminescent. This is because of the plankton that soaks in the sunlight during the day and gives off light at night. It's not a guarantee, but if you go down there and get to see the photoluminescence, it's probably one of the few experiences that you can only have in Australia. And speaking of experiences you can only have in Australia,
Make sure you hit subscribe if you don't want to miss out on more amazing experiences. Also, check the description for some useful links and maybe even a map of all locations mentioned in this video.